version of Ole Miss actually exists? Is it the one that we saw down in Oxford last week in a 20-17 loss against Kentucky? Or the one that just marched on into Williams-Brice Stadium and secured a 27-3 win over South Carolina coming off of a bye? Or is it really somewhere in the middle? That's going to be next week's decision as we get set up for the down in the Bayou. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. It's Cole Thompson riding solo as we break down everything that we saw in Columbia. South Carolina drops one against Ole Miss, who rebounds and probably now gets that momentum going into Baton Rouge. 27-3. Real quickly, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below and the ring notification. That way you don't miss a single episode of SEC on you. And also make sure that you hit the ring notification because we're doing live shows, reactions, everything that goes on with this program. Make sure that you also download the podcast version of the show where you have get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. If you want the back and forth banter to keep on going, it's at Mr. Cole Thompson on both Twitter and Instagram. And check out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. This postgame show is brought to you by our friends over at the GameTime app. Download the GameTime app and use the promo code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. This isn't just for college football games. This is for the NFL. If you're somebody that roots for Ole Miss that lives in Atlanta, next time you want to go see the Falcons play, go ahead and use the GameTime app. You want to catch a comedy show, go ahead and use the GameTime app. You want to go see Taylor Swift in concert, probably not going to get those type of tickets, but you get the idea. Use the GameTime app promo code SECU for $20 off your first purchase. 27-3 final score. And honestly, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you still feel like there's room for improvement. Absolutely, you should. But the one thing that you can say is, at this moment, for this day, going into next week, where you know that that is the game of all games that truly is going to get you right back into that contention category, the rumors are going to be silent. People last week were so gung-ho to be able to talk about what was going to happen with Lane Kiffin. He's looking at Florida. He's looking down at Gainesville. Billy is about ready to depart the swamp for the final time. He's going down with the ship against UCF. And then things just only get worse because if you see a gator appear on Lane Kiffin's Twitter feed today. So naturally, that was going to be the talk of the conversation, but it's not right now. Now, focus turns back to Oxford, back to Rebel Nation. We're going to be in the college football playoff, and they can't. They can be in the college football playoff. Let's break down how everything went for the Rebels, and then we'll talk about what happens with South Carolina moving forward. For starters, you saw a more aggressive Jackson Dart taking shots. Last week, my biggest gripe, my biggest complaint with this entire matchup against against Kentucky. Why were you only targeting Trey Harris? I get it. Number 9 is supposed to be the number 1 receiver in the SEC. He may be the best receiver in college football right now in terms of production. But you got Juice Wells, you got Jordan Watkins, you got a bunch of players that are coming on back to be a part of this system, this identity. The Last Dance aura is supposed to be the storyline down in Oxford. And also, you were the number 1 scoring offense. You were the number 1 rushing offense. You were great on third down. You were great through the air. Jackson Dart is en route to winning a Heisman Trophy or at least being in the Big Apple. And number 9's your dude. Well, in the second quarter, number 9 left with a knee injury and didn't come back. So naturally, you had to target elsewhere. And you did. Antoine Wells, Juice finished with 97 yards. You also had Jordan Watkins finished with 5 catches. Caden Priestcorn got a 13-yard boot scooting boogie. Caden Lee had 2 catches for 22 yards. You saw Jackson Dart kind of take that next step forward to the offense that's supposed to be working down in Oxford, down on the Grove. You also saw the rushing attack take that next step forward. Henry Parrish Jr. found his way into the end zone, did average 3.9 yards, but you're okay with that. Matt Jones, 13 yards, did pick up a first down on a 10-yard run. Felt really good about that. You also had J.J. Pegues. And honestly, do you remember back in the 1985 Super Bowl when they went to the fridge, Richard Perry, kind of throw him on in? Yeah, that's kind of what you're going to have to do. It's basically their version of the tush push, but instead it's the Pegues push. That's what you're looking forward to at this point down in Oxford. You also saw your defense kind of take that next step forward. Let's talk about that. I'm serious for a minute. Let's talk about that. Last week, 10 tackles for losses, 5 sacks, took away the run game. You entered this game with the number 1 run defense in the country, and you feel really good about yourself. In fact, more importantly, you feel like you can go toe-to-toe with anybody in the country, especially when it comes to a college football playoff berth. You did so again. You basically knew that Lenore Sellers, coming off of an injury, was going to have to trust his legs, was going to have to try and push balls down the football field. And when he did, threw an interception. When he did, had a couple of 3-and-outs. 151 rushing yards. That feels like a lot. It was on 43 attempts. Now it doesn't because it was 3.5 yards per play. This defense found a way to pressure the Norris Sellers. 5 sacks on the day. 10.5 tackles for losses. They corralled their way into the backfield, and they took away the biggest element that makes the Norris Sellers stick. Nobody on that team rushed for over 55 yards, and no running back, Oscar Attaway, Juju McDowell, Raheem Sanders, rushed for more than 34 and averaged less than 3.8 yards per play. That's what you saw. So really, when you go back and you think about this for a minute, well, last week, it was all about the offense not having an identity. Last week, it was that first play, that opening drive against Kentucky. They were able to deliver the beatdown. And unfortunately, that's kind of the case. Well, now the defense does its job. Now the offense opens up its playbook, and they jump out to a 14-0 lead, and they carry the momentum. But why did they jump out to a 14-0 lead? Because honestly, South Carolina gave it to them. Just go back to the opening drive for South Carolina in your own backyard, in a moment where you know this is a game that is going to be able to turn everyone onto you. Fake punt. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? Did anybody fall for that? Because I didn't. I think everybody knew that was going to be a fake punt. Nobody on the field fell for that. So then you get a touchdown. And now it's 7-0. The next drive, completion downfield to Joshua Simon. A penalty that's intercepted because of pass interference call. Robbie Ashford up the middle. Robbie Ashford, then fumble. Ball right back to the Ole Miss Rebels. Now it's 14-0 because J.J. Pegues is a giant monster who can't find a way to be brought down in coverage. And so the trickery came back to bite you in the ass really early on. And you never caught momentum offensively, ever. The defense kind of did its job. Sorry, when you look at what Jackson Dart can do, who Jackson Dart is, how he's played against everyone in the country this sphere, how in the hell do you think that this is a bad performance from the defense at times? 285 passing yards, 140 yards on the ground, multiple penalties by this offense. And yet still, you forced a turnover. You held them to 17 first downs. You held them to only 27 minutes of offense. It was that your offense couldn't meet. That was kind of the case when you think about this for a team like South Carolina. The defense did its job, and I know we got to talk about Dylan Stewart. Dylan Stewart is an 18-year-old that got caught up in the moment, but did find a way to make more plays later on. He's going to learn from that mistake. Still, that is the ultimate flag of all flags that's going to come down. The taunting penalties, the careless calls, that is the ultimate Trump play of all plays that you know is going to get called 10 times out of 10. It is. It just is. It was not a good showing from the offense for South Carolina. Far from it, in my opinion. In fact, it was probably one of the more dreadful performances. And here we are once again talking about the Gamecocks as this wild card. Who the hell knows what they are team this year? I told you they were going to be the wild card of 2024. If you tell me that they find a way to beat Alabama, don't worry, we're going to discuss it. Don't worry, we're going to discuss it in just a little bit. I can tell you what, I'd believe it. You tell me that they find a way to lose to Vanderbilt in a few weeks, which, by the way, now kind of feels possible. I believe it. You tell me that they're able to go march on into Norman, Oklahoma, and take care of business against a team like the Sooners. I believe it because they're such an inconsistent team. And at some point, you have to realize that things are either going to change for the better, or you got to go wave the white flag on what currently is this organization. I'm not ready to give up on Shane Beamer. Maybe that's just me because of I would run through a wall for him. Maybe it's because of I believe that the best is still ahead. I believe there's so much that is actually still going on behind closed doors. And if you look today, and really the last 48 hours, how he's recruited is signs of the right direction. They just landed 2 4-star wide receivers. Now, they also have to sign on the dotted line and be able to join the team in COLA later on, but they did sign their letter of intent in terms of they committed to the team right now. That's a step in the right direction. But you also have to realize there will be moments. There will be moments where eventually just being good on the recruiting trail, feeling like that the aura and the energy inside the building is one thing. It's not there. This is a game where eventually you realize that maybe South Carolina could have kept things close. But you got Ole Miss coming off a loss. They had their backs against the wall. They were on life support. They had no direction. If things did not go their way, they were ultimately going to have to punt on the season. And there are things that are a little bit different in Oxford than there are in South Carolina these days. South Carolina goes 8-4. I think that some fans would be pretty upset. I think most fans would be happy. 8-4 at Ole Miss is not cutting it this year. 8-4 at Ole Miss is the arguably biggest slap in the face that you could get, because it just shows that last year was a flash in the pan, and this is really who they are. This is really what they are as a program. So what do you do? So what do you do at this point? Comes down to getting better at playing. It gets better when it comes down to these type of moments. For Ole Miss, they have to do it this year. For Ole Miss, it has to happen this year, because if you don't get these type of scenarios and you don't get these type of years where things are turning in your direction, things are making the move in the right position, that you don't get that, because of it's a one done. You went out, you spent a lot of money on the recruiting trail, you spent a lot of money in the transfer portal, you built up your program with a ton of veterans to return. This has to be it. And for a lot of reasons, it has to be it, because if you want Lane Kiffin to stick around, you have to believe that there is something that he's sticking around for. Progress, momentum, consistency. It's a new era of the SEC. I say this every single time that a team joins. How you begin your tenure defines on what you can be. Look at Arkansas. Arkansas for years was a powerhouse in the come up. When you had Bobby Petrino, they were number 5 in the country before the entire incident that occurred in 2012. And then Texas A&M and Mizzou joined, and they've had one really decent above average season since. And now we view Arkansas in a completely different light than we did when they joined in 1992, back in 2008, back when they had guys like Darren McFadden, Peyton Hillis, Felix Jones, quarterbacks galore, defensive players that were becoming All-Americans. We think of them differently. That could be Ole Miss. A consistent player in the college football playoff, but it has to start somewhere. It has to start at some point, and it has to start when you have a veteran core that said last year's win against Penn State in the Peach Bowl wasn't good enough. You get embarrassed at home against a Mark Stoops-led team that you're far superior than, but they show you that they're going to deliver a punch that you aren't coming back from, and you have to answer. You did. You left a lot of meat on the bones. There were multiple passes intended for Juice Wells that were out of play. Juice Wells should have had a touchdown, and the final score should have been 34-3, but you fumble it at the 1-yard line, touches back for an easy turnover on downs. There are still things that got to be corrected and fixed if you are a team like Ole Miss, because you can't do it against a team like LSU. They'll capitalize. They'll eat you up. You can't do it against a team like Georgia. I know that they just went down to the wire in the deep South's oldest rivalry. I know what that game was. It sometimes just happens. Rivalry games, you don't know what to expect, and sometimes you wake up and choose violence. That's what Auburn did. That won't happen when you play against an Ole Miss squad. It won't. Now, for South Carolina, again, you're a team that has to figure out what direction you're going in. Do you think that Sellers is the guy? Maybe. Maybe not. All I got told last offseason was that Lenora Sellers was going to be the guy. We feel really good about the direction with Spencer Rattler, but just wait until we get Lenora Sellers out there. Lenora Sellers did not look like the guy today, but then he did when you played against a team like LSU, and he responded when he was under pressure. He responded when he made a mistake. And then as soon as he left that game, we saw everyone kind of turn their eyes to Robbie Ashford, and most of us kind of realized it was not going to happen. Yeah, maybe you'll keep things close. Yeah, maybe you'll figure things out. Yeah, maybe you'll watch as LSU makes a mistake against this defense, but the offense wasn't getting the job done. So what do you do now? Well, you have one of two options. For the rest of the year, you're going to have to ride it out with Sellers, or you're going to have to turn to Robbie Ashford. For some of you, it feels like that you're in a rock and a hard place, and you might as well just grab the gun and just pull the trigger. That's how you feel, and I understand that, and I completely get it, especially when you see 3 points against a team that last year, and also more importantly, against a team like this year, was able to find a way to capitalize against Ole Miss's pass defense. I understand that. But one of them's got to be your guy for the rest of the season. Then you can go out to the transfer portal, bring in another person. But it doesn't just stop there. It also stops when it comes to bringing in the right coordinators. bringing in the right offensive line coach, bringing in the right defensive personnel, bringing in the right wide receivers coach, making sure that you're not just trusting the transfer portal and you're also trusting the personnel with the program. They're all things that come into play. People seem to always put the thought process simply on the head coach. There is more than that. It's everything. Look at Auburn right now. Auburn found a way to wake up against a team like Georgia, but they couldn't get the job done against Cal because of bad coaching. It's more than just finding the right person at the helm. It's about finding the right people that will go to battle with him. And right now, they don't have the right teachers in the building. Right now, they don't have anyone near the proper personnel. We don't know what to expect. The defense did its job at times, but also they gave up points. The defense did its job to be able to force a guy like Trey Harris out of the game. They also were able to get blanketed coverage against Juice Wells. They also were able to take away the rushing attack at times. 3.5 yards per play is not a bad performance. But you also can't have careless penalties. You also can't have unnecessary flags that cost you first down, and put you behind the sticks and just gives up free yardage. It's coaching. It is. And this is on Shane Beamer too. And Beamer's got a lot of work that he has to figure out. And Beamer has a lot of things that he has to be able to fix in the next few weeks. And it's not just coming against a team like Alabama, who also, best of luck to them when they have to go travel down to Bryant-Denny Stadium. I know what happened. Trust me, we're going to talk about it very soon. We have to talk about it very soon. But that's kind of where you are. That's kind of it. You're the most wishy-washy team in the SEC for 2024. You look incredible on the road against Kentucky. You look fantastic, and you get a bad call that bounces against you, against LSU. And here you are watching as Ole Miss capitalizes on your careless mistakes. You watch as Ole Miss capitalizes on your careless penalties. You watch as you shoot yourself in the foot the way that Arkansas has, the way that Auburn has, the way that other programs that probably should be feeling better about the direction of their program, but you're not. It's not just Shane Beamer. It's not just Shane Beamer, and it's not just the Norris Sellers. But those are going to be people that you have to put around. Those are going to be people that you have to kind of feel with. And I get it. Nostalgia is one thing. There are people that are going to have to go ahead and figure things out. I understand that there are going to be things that you have to work on. Careless penalties naturally being one of them. But it's not going to be fixed overnight. It's not. It's going to be a long season. It's going to be a season where you're going to get some upsets. I'm telling you right now, South Carolina fans, if you're panicking or just punting on the season, please don't. You know that this is not going to be the only performance that you see this year where you're embarrassed. And you know this is not going to be the version that we see of South Carolina every single week. You have things that can be corrected, and you have ways that you're able to pick up the corner and pick up the pieces and turn in the right direction. You do. It's just not happening right away. I'm sorry. That's just kind of it. And if you're Ole Miss, well, here's the good news. The version that you saw today was a B- version at best on offense. You capitalize on mistakes made by the other opponent. You get to sit currently at 5-1. But you also have to now travel into the next belly of the beast, into the next atmosphere, into the next psycho crazy place that is Baton Rouge, Louisiana, Death Valley on a Saturday night in October. Best of luck to you. Best of luck to you. But performances like that, you're not coming back. And then at that point, you are on must-win mode against Georgia. You got to be able to play better. You're not going to see careless penalties. You're not going to see careless mistakes. You're not going to see people be able to punt instead of pass. You're not going to be able to see people put themselves in terrible situations. You're not. That's what you have to work for. Sorry. Let's go ahead and get some comments before we got to break down what we did see, unfortunately, in Nashville, which is going to be hard for me to have to deal with. Justin Huden, Fire Beamer, if Vandy beats Bama, life is a long-time loyal Gamecock checking out to find another team outside of Spurrier. We ain't nothing more than a mediocre team. It feels that way. I'm sure you feel that way right now. I have a funny feeling Texas will be back at number 1 this week. Sandman, they're going to be back at number 1. They are 100% going to be back at number 1. Hold up, an Ole Miss defender just went down. Yeah, can we talk about that? Because, by the way, yes, we know what happened last week. It was dumb. It was absolutely egregious. Why are we allowing Lane Kiffin, of all people, the man who has been bickering and bellowing about how players will fake injuries, be the one to do it? But how many times did we see injury timeouts from both sides? And it came a lot. And also, at this point, if you start to see players go down, I would make sure that they're out for multiple drives. Walter Nolan falls on down. He, quote unquote, has an injury. He's back in 2 drives. What is that? The same thing happened for South Carolina, but I don't think that they were fake injuries. What I'm just saying is that more and more you see injuries on injuries on injuries. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. What is it? And if you're one thing, you better be one thing. But if you're the other thing, you better be out for a while. It has to be that way. If I was Sellers, I'd pull a juice and dip out better than this. Maybe he is. Maybe he's not. I don't know. There's still questions on the offensive line. You still have questions with your wide receiver core. There's two truths here, and I had to kind of have this conversation with Mizzou fans earlier. Brady Cook was not good today. Brady Cook was awful at times today against Texas A&M. But he also didn't have help. He wasn't getting wide receivers to catch passes when he was open. He wasn't getting offensive line protection. Mizzou shot itself in the foot with careless penalties, an illegal formation, an illegal lineman downfield, a holding call, countless times. Two truths can be there. That's kind of what you got with Lenore Sellers. He was not good today. Nobody's going to be sitting here and saying, you throw for 162 yards and an interception, you feel confident in your team. But nobody also is going to be sitting here and saying, oh, well, how many times was he sacked? How many tackles for losses were there? Let me just stop you. 5 sacks, 10.5 tackles for losses. Nobody's winning with that. Look, bro, I got to admit, coaching cost the game. Coaching did cost the game. And more importantly, it started off extremely terrible. I get it. You went for the fourth down. You went for the fake punt. You tried to keep people slipping, and then it didn't. And then careless penalties cost you, and then multiple mistakes by the young players cost you. It was an overall crap show. It was. There's corrections. There are many corrections that you can turn to. And I think South Carolina still can be that team that we talk about where maybe they aren't going to be a college football playoff contender, but they can beat up on some teams. Look at Mizzou. They can be the Mizzou version that came on the field today. I think that if their offense is able to pick up any momentum, they can at least keep things interesting or make it 9-6 in Oklahoma. They could do some things. I'm not ready to go ahead and give up the way that some people are. I'm not. Beamer's got to go. I'm tired of the excuses. He's not going this year. I genuinely don't think, unless there is a 2-10 finish, he is going this year. And I'm not ready to say that it's 2-10 finish. I'm not. The coaching's failed. It's a revolving story until they let him go. Yeah, I mean, probably. 4 years and it's still the same blank. South Carolina is the worst team in the SEC. Vanderbilt will beat the crap out of them following another. Okay. No, the worst team is Mississippi State. Far and away, the worst team is Mississippi State. They have no quarterback. They have very little offensive identity. They have no secondary. The only reason why they were able to keep things interesting against Texas was they played the tempo game in the first half. And then Arch Manning realized, hey, I'm Arch freaking Manning. I'm going to go deliver. That's what he did. And guess what? You watch it happen. Dylan Stewart, he'll transfer, and I hope he does. SC fans should apologize to Chiefs Walls. He's not going to transfer. I guarantee you he won't. Recruiting doesn't mean crap when you play like it and don't win. Recruiting doesn't mean crap when you don't develop talent. Look at Texas A&M in 2022. Think about that for a minute. Texas A&M in 2022 had the number 1 class. They had the most blue chip players to ever join a program, but they didn't develop the talent. Development of talent is more important, or not as important as recruiting. And that's kind of where you are right now. You got to get better at it. That comes from coaching. This is going to be an offseason very similar and iridescent to what we saw down at LSU last year, where you will watch Shane Beamer part ways with a bunch of people, and if the organization is willing to spend properly, they'll bring in the right personnel because if they realize the teachers are as important as the students. I would much rather have a teacher that can bump up a B student to an A+ than have an A+ student that's working with a B teacher. Because if you're not getting properly prepared, it's not happening that way. You believe the nostalgia he brings to the table. Recruiting only gets you so far. You have to be able to coach. The Harbor experiment is over. Okay, I get it with the Harbor thing. I do. I completely understand that. I believe that, again, I've watched Shane Beamer do this before. I watched him do it in 2021 when he had Zeb Noland as his starting quarterback, and they went 6-6. I believe I saw in 2022 him dismantle Tennessee, which, by the way, that game was out of reach before Hendon Hooker got hurt, and then they marched on in and they took down Clemson, knocking 2 teams out of the college football playoff to have them battle it off on who wanted it more against South Carolina in the Orange Bowl. That's why I'm not ready to give up on Shane Beamer just yet. And I get it. This is one of those games. You have a week off, you have a week to mentally prepare, and you don't. You don't. It's a bad look. I completely understand that. But unfortunately, that is the reality of where you're living these days. Let's get to a few more comments before we get on out of here. Dylan Stewart could have gone to OSU or Bama. If he wanted money to go elsewhere, he would have stopped with this BS. Yeah, that's my point. That's my point. It's just one of those things where he's not going anywhere. He's not. Now, you got to be able to bring in the right people But if you don't, yeah, he's not going anywhere. If you think that he is, I don't know what else to tell you. We've done the fake punt. Our defense caused a 3-and-out and the whole momentum in the shift. That was the point. Charlie's right. For my money, even though you could have seen maybe South Carolina make things interesting, they get a deep pass downfield to Mazio Bennett. They find a way to get to Joshua Simon. They find a way into the end zone. Regardless, the fake punt was the moment where you sucked the momentum out because everyone was prepared for it. Everyone was prepared for it. I'm sorry. That's kind of just the case. And at that moment, that's where you had to turn. Ole Miss, 27. South Carolina, 23. Ole Miss, still alive in the college football playoff hunt. South Carolina, can you move back into spoiler, or am I going to have to put you this week, on my birthday week of all weeks, back into the pretender category? I'm not sure. You're definitely not going to be in wait and see. We're going to figure things out. But make sure that you like the video, hit the ring notification down below. We're going to be talking momentarily, literally in about 5 minutes, because I got to build another graphic real fast of what we see, or more importantly, what we saw in the most horrendous game of all games for my money, but still a game that we got to talk about. Vanderbilt versus Alabama. Make sure that also you're following us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at SEC Unfiltered. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Make sure that also you're following us, me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson, and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. Ole Miss, still alive in the college football playoff hunt. South Carolina, no idea what to make of them. Peace.